The mission begins. In the vast lecture hall of the Galactic Academy, the brightest minds from across the galaxy gathered, each representing a different species, each with their own strengths, talents, and ambitions. The air buzzed with anticipation, and a sense of foreboding hung over the assembly. Dr. Xerxes, the wizened and revered Xixian xenoanthropology professor, stood at the front of the hall, his silver skin reflecting the dim light of the room. He cleared his throat, the sound echoing through the silence, and began to speak, his voice gravelly, yet commanding. The Galactic Council has issued a decree, unprecedented in its scope and severity, he announced, his eyes scanning the crowd, lingering on a few faces that would soon become central to the mission at hand. A select group of you will be chosen to infiltrate Earth, a world that has been quarantined for centuries, its inhabitants an enigma to us all. This mission is rife with peril. Exposure could shatter the fragile peace we've worked so hard to maintain. Yet, the Council is vexed by Earth's long isolation and demands answers. The Academy has been tasked with selecting students who are not only exceptional in their studies, but also adaptable, resourceful, and above all, discreet. Ricky Davis, the star grab ball captain from the Andromeda sector, felt a shiver of anticipation run down his spine at the mention of Earth. Known for his athleticism and quick reflexes, Ricky had always been a leader among his peers, and the idea of a mission this dangerous, this vital, stirred something deep within him. Beside him, his best friend and intellectual rival, Lennox, sat in quiet contemplation. Where Ricky was all physical prowess, Lennox was the epitome of cerebral brilliance, reserved but brilliant. Lennox had always been drawn to the mysteries of the universe, and Earth, with its forbidden knowledge and untapped secrets, was a puzzle he couldn't wait to unravel. Dr. Xerxes continued, detailing the rigorous selection process that would whittle down the candidates to only the most exceptional. The trials would be relentless, designed to break the weak and reveal the true potential of the strong. Ricky's mind was already racing, imagining the challenges ahead, the physical tests that would push him to his limits, and the mental puzzles that Lennox would undoubtedly excel in. The combat simulations would be the first trial, and Ricky knew he would shine. He could already see himself weaving through holographic enemies, his pulse rifle an extension of his body as he racked up an impressive kill count. But he also knew that Lennox would be just as formidable in the strategic scenarios, outmaneuvering opponents with his keen intellect and creative problem-solving skills. As the trials began, Ricky and Lennox quickly emerged as top contenders, their skills complementing each other perfectly. However, a new rivalry soon emerged in the form of Zephyr, a charismatic Arcturian with a silver tongue and an ego to match. Zephyr seemed determined to outshine Ricky at every turn, and their verbal sparring matches often escalated into physical altercations, leaving them both bruised and seething. Lennox, ever the diplomat, tried to intervene, reminding them that this wasn't a solo mission. "We're supposed to be a team," he would say, his voice firm but calm, hoping to diffuse the tension between his two friends. Despite the friction, Ricky, Lennox, Zephyr, and a brilliant Xixian engineer named Aria found themselves at the top of the leaderboard as the trials came to an end. Their diverse skills and seamless teamwork had impressed even the most stringent of instructors. As they stood before Commandant Zarn, the Academy's imposing leader, he gave them a rare smile. "You four have proven yourselves worthy," he rumbled, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "You will be the ones to infiltrate Earth and uncover its secrets." The gravity of the mission settled upon them as Dr. Xerxes outlined the intensive training regimen that awaited them. The next 3 months would be grueling, with physical conditioning, language immersion, and cultural studies. They would need to learn to blend in seamlessly with the humans, mastering their behavior and suppressing their alien abilities. But the stakes were high. If they were discovered, it could lead to a galactic incident and shatter the fragile peace that had been maintained for so long. As the 4 students prepared to embark on their mission, each had their own motivations. Ricky was driven by a desire to prove himself, to show that he was more than just a star athlete. Lennox was eager to unravel the mysteries of Earth, to uncover the truth behind the planet's long isolation. Arya, the engineer, was motivated by scientific curiosity, eager to study Earth's technology and perhaps incorporate some of its innovations into her own designs. And Zephyr, ever the wild card, relished the opportunity for adventure and mischief on a new world. Together, they threw themselves into their training with single-minded focus, pushing their minds and bodies to the limit as they prepared to infiltrate Earth. But even as they learned more about the planet and its people, a nagging sense of unease began to grow. The history of Earth was riddled with contradictions and gaps, and the more they dug, the more questions arose. Why was the planet quarantined in the first place? What secrets was the Council so desperate to uncover? And perhaps most unsettling of all, what if the truth about Earth was far more complex and dangerous than anyone in the galaxy realized? Unearthing the mysteries, as the weeks of training wore on, the intensity of the mission became more palpable. The team had to master every nuance of human culture, from the way they spoke to the way they thought. Dr. Xerxes introduced them to Colonel Jack Hawkins, a gruff ex-military officer who had lived among humans for years. His job was to ensure they didn't blow their cover the moment they set foot on Earth. "Listen up, cadets!" Hawkins barked during their first meeting, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen and done it all. "Humans are a suspicious bunch. One wrong move, and you'll have more than just your mission at risk. You'll have your lives on the line." The training was grueling, with long days blending into nights as they absorbed vast quantities of information about human history, customs, and technology. Ricky struggled with the concept of physical greetings, handshakes, hugs, and the like. His tentacles instinctively recoiled at the thought of skin-to-skin contact, something that Hawkins quickly noticed. "No, Davis!" Hawkins snapped during a handshake drill. "Firm grip, 2 pumps, then release. And for the love of the galaxy, stop looking like you're about to vomit every time you touch someone." Ricky gritted his teeth and forced himself to comply, his discomfort evident but diminishing with each attempt. Arya, on the other hand, excelled in their biology lessons. She marveled at the intricacies of human physiology, practicing shifting her cellular structure to match human form perfectly. The process was fascinating to her, and she often spent long hours in the lab, studying every aspect of human biology down to the cellular level. Her dedication was unmatched, and it wasn't long before she could seamlessly blend in, even in a crowd of humans. As the weeks passed, the team began to gel. Crisis simulations revealed Ricky's natural leadership abilities, while Lennox's empathy and strategic mind proved invaluable in navigating complex social scenarios. However, their progress was nearly derailed during a critical training exercise. Ricky and Zephyr, paired for a simulated human negotiation, let their rivalry flare up once again. What should have been a calm discussion devolved into a shouting match, culminating in a physical altercation that left both aliens bruised and seething. Colonel Hawkins yanked them apart, his face thunderous. "You idiots!" he roared, his voice echoing through the training room. "You think this is a game? Out there, a mistake like this could get you killed, or worse, exposed." Dr. Xerxes, normally jovial and encouraging, called them into his office after the incident. His demeanor was grave, his eyes hard as he spoke. "Gentlemen, I cannot stress enough the importance of this mission. Your personal grievances must be set aside. Learn to work together, or you will be removed from the team. Is that clear?" The warning hung heavy in the air, and both Ricky and Zephyr knew they had crossed a line. In the days that followed, an uneasy truce formed between them. Zephyr, always prideful, extended a hand to Ricky. "Truce," he said, his voice low but sincere. Ricky hesitated for a moment before grasping Zephyr's hand. Truce, he agreed, though the competitive fire in his eyes remained. With tensions eased, the team redoubled their efforts, and soon they were ready for the final phase of their training, full immersion. They would be sent to Earth, disguised as exchange students from a foreign country, with the mission to blend in and gather intelligence. The day of their departure arrived quickly, and the weight of what they were about to undertake settled heavily on them. As they boarded their cloaked ship, Earth's blue sphere filling the view screen, a mix of excitement and trepidation coursed through them. The mission was real now. No more simulations, no more drills. This was it. The ship's descent into Earth's atmosphere was smooth, and soon they were flying low over a sprawling cityscape. "Welcome to New York City," Hawkins's voice crackled through the ship's speakers. "This is where you begin your mission. Remember, from this moment on, you are your human identities. There's no turning back." As they disembarked in the heart of Manhattan, the team was overwhelmed by the sensory overload. The city was a cacophony of sounds, sights, and smells that were completely alien to them. Ricky led the way with a confidence he didn't entirely feel, his senses on high alert as they made their way through the crowded streets. The underground terminal was a blur of motion, with humans rushing past, their faces buried in small communication devices. Lennox flinched as a stranger bumped into him, muttering a quick apology before continuing on his way. Their first encounter with human food was equally disorienting. They found themselves in a small, bustling pizzeria, the smell of melted cheese and tomato sauce thick in the air. "Is that pizza?" Kai, the team's shape-shifting wildcard, sniffed the air, their eyes lighting up with curiosity. They ordered a few slices and sat down to eat, awkwardly mimicking the humans around them. "This is interesting," Arya said, her human form shifting slightly as she tried to make sense of the greasy, cheesy concoction. The next few days were a blur as they settled into their new roles as students at Columbia University. Richard's natural charisma served him well as he navigated the social dynamics of his new environment. At a freshman mixer, he found himself surrounded by a group of admiring humans, regaling them with fabricated tales of his high school football career. Arya, meanwhile, struggled to suppress her instinctive curiosity, her mind racing with ideas as she observed the rudimentary technology on display in the city. "It's so primitive," she muttered under her breath, earning a sharp elbow from Lennox. But as they delved deeper into human society, they began to uncover disturbing anomalies. Casual conversations revealed depths of emotion and experience that left the alien students reeling. During a study session in the library, Lennox found himself drawn into a discussion with Eric, a kind-hearted history major. Eric passionately explained his thesis on the impact of the War of 1812, his eyes lighting up as he spoke. Lennox listened intently, but his gaze kept drifting to a faded painting on the wall, depicting a strange, fiery object in the sky above a battlefield. "What's that?" Lennox asked, interrupting Eric mid-sentence. Eric followed his gaze, his brow furrowing. "Oh, that old thing? It's a bit of a mystery, actually. Some people think it's just artistic license, but there are accounts from both American and British soldiers of strange lights in the sky during key battles. Probably just shooting stars or something." Lennox's curiosity was piqued, but before he could press for more details, his communicator vibrated against his wrist. A message from Richard flashed across its surface. "Emergency team meeting. Our cover may be compromised." Lennox excused himself and raced across the quad, his mind churning with possibilities. Something was amiss on Earth, something that went beyond mere historical anomalies. As he burst into Richard's dorm room, breathless and anxious, the rest of the team was already there, their faces etched with concern. "We've got a problem," Richard said, pacing the small space. "I think we've been made." The unraveling, Richard's words hung heavily in the air, and the tension in the room was palpable. The team exchanged worried glances, each member trying to process the gravity of the situation. Lennox finally broke the silence, his voice tight with concern. "What do you mean we've been made?" Richard stopped pacing and turned to face them, his expression grim. "It's Professor Jameson in my political science class. He kept giving me these looks, like he knew something. Then after class, he asked to speak with me privately about my unique perspective on interplanetary relations. It felt off." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed Richard's words. Arya was the first to respond, her analytical mind already racing through possibilities. "It could be nothing, just a curious professor. But if he suspects anything, we could be in serious trouble. We've been trained to avoid detection, but we can't account for everything." Kai, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke up, their voice laced with concern. "If our cover is blown, we'll be putting not just ourselves, but the entire mission at risk. We need to be careful, but we can't afford to panic." Arya nodded in agreement. "We need to gather more information before making any drastic moves. We'll keep a low profile and see if we can find out more about Professor Jameson's intentions. With a plan in place, the team resolved to stay vigilant while continuing their mission. The days that followed were tense, with each member hyper-aware of their surroundings and interactions. Richard, in particular, was on edge, constantly analyzing every conversation and glance for signs of suspicion. However, no overt actions were taken against them, and it seemed as though their cover remained intact for the time being. But the unease that had settled over them didn't dissipate. Instead, it grew stronger, like a dark cloud looming on the horizon. They began to notice other strange occurrences, glitches in their human disguises, unusual behavior from some of the humans they interacted with, and odd signals picked up by their concealed alien technology. The more they tried to blend in, the more it felt like the world around them was watching, waiting for them to slip up. One night, as Richard was huddled over a stack of documents in the university library, his mind racing with thoughts of the mission, he stumbled upon something that made his blood run cold. Buried within a classified file on the university's server, he found references to an old project, one that involved covert monitoring of extraterrestrial life forms on Earth. The project had been officially terminated years ago, but Richard couldn't shake the feeling that it had simply gone underground. His heart pounded as he copied the files to a secure drive, knowing that what he had uncovered could have dire consequences for their mission. He rushed back to the dorms, his mind whirling with the implications of what he had found. When he arrived, he found the rest of the team waiting for him, their faces etched with concern. "What did you find?" Lennox asked, his voice low and urgent. Richard hesitated for a moment before revealing the files. "There's an old project, one that was supposedly shut down years ago. It involved monitoring extraterrestrial life on Earth. I think it might still be active." The room fell silent as everyone processed this new information. Kai was the first to break the silence, their voice tinged with fear. "If they're still monitoring us, it's only a matter of time before they figure out who we really are." Arya shook her head, her expression determined. "We can't let that happen. We need to find out who's behind this and stop them before they can expose us. But how?" Richard asked, his voice filled with frustration. "We don't even know who we can trust." It was Lennox who finally spoke up, his voice calm and steady. "We need to go to the source. If there's a hidden project monitoring extraterrestrials, there's got to be a base of operations somewhere. We find it, we shut it down. The plan was risky, but they all knew it was their only option. They would need to track down the remnants of this project and destroy any evidence that could expose them. It wouldn't be easy, and the stakes couldn't be higher, but they were out of options." The next morning, they began their search, scouring every bit of information they could find on the project. They hacked into government databases, university records, and even tapped into classified military channels, piecing together the puzzle bit by bit. It was slow work, and the constant threat of discovery loomed over them like a sword, but they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that their very lives depended on it. Days turned into weeks as they followed the trail, and finally, their persistence paid off. They uncovered a lead, an old military base located in a remote part of the country, one that had been officially decommissioned years ago. But according to the data they had uncovered, it was still active, and it was the likely center of the monitoring project. They knew it was a trap, that they were walking into the lion's den, but they had no choice. It was their only chance to secure their mission and ensure that Earth's secrets, and their own, remained hidden. As they prepared for the infiltration, the weight of their mission bore down on them more heavily than ever. This was it, the moment they had trained for, the culmination of all their efforts. The success of their mission and the future of their people rested on their shoulders, and as they set off into the night, leaving the safety of their disguises behind, they knew that whatever happened, there would be no turning back. Infiltration. The abandoned military base loomed ahead, its dark silhouette barely visible against the starless night sky. The team approached cautiously, every sense on high alert, their nerves taut with anticipation. This was the moment they had been dreading, yet also the moment they had been preparing for. Failure was not an option. Richard led the way, his heart pounding as he scanned the perimeter through his night vision goggles. The base appeared deserted, but he knew better than to trust appearances. "Stay close," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the soft crunch of gravel beneath their boots. "This place might look abandoned, but don't let your guard down." Arya, who had taken on the role of the team's tech expert, was already at work, her fingers flying over a handheld device as she hacked into the base's security systems. "I'm in," she whispered back. "I've disabled the external cameras and sensors, but we'll have to move fast. It won't be long before someone notices the breach." The team slipped through the fence, moving like shadows as they approached the main building. The base was eerily silent. The only sound, the soft rustle of the wind through the overgrown weeds. They reached the entrance, a heavy steel door that had clearly seen better days. Lennox, using his enhanced strength, pried it open just enough for them to slip inside. Once inside, they found themselves in a dimly lit corridor, the air thick with dust and the stale smell of disuse. The walls were lined with old rusting equipment, relics of a bygone era. But the further they ventured into the base, the more signs of recent activity they noticed. Fresh footprints in the dust, newly installed security panels, and the faint hum of machinery echoing through the halls. "This place isn't as abandoned as we thought," Kai muttered, their eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. Richard nodded, his grip tightening on his weapon. "Stay sharp. We're getting close." As they navigated the labyrinthine corridors, Arya's device guided them deeper into the heart of the base. The air grew cooler, and the hum of machinery grew louder until they finally reached a large, reinforced door at the end of the corridor. Arya paused, her fingers hovering over the keypad as she turned to the others. "This is it," she said, her voice laced with tension. "Beyond this door is the control room. Whatever they're using to monitor extraterrestrial life on Earth, it's in there." Lennox stepped forward, his expression grim. "I'll handle the door. Get ready for whatever's on the other side." With a nod, Arya stepped aside, and Lennox braced himself before applying his full strength to the door. It groaned in protest before finally giving way, swinging open with a heavy thud. The room beyond was vast, filled with rows of computers and monitors, all humming with activity. At the far end of the room, a massive screen displayed a map of Earth, overlaid with a grid of red dots, each one representing a monitored location. Standing before the screen was a lone figure, his back turned to them, seemingly oblivious to their presence. Richard signaled for the team to spread out, each member taking up a position that allowed them to cover the room from multiple angles. Slowly, he approached the figure, his weapon raised and ready. "Hands where I can see them," he commanded, his voice steady but firm. The figure stiffened but didn't turn around. Instead, a low, sinister chuckle echoed through the room. "You're too late, Richard Davis," the man said, his voice dripping with contempt. "The council knows you're here. They've known for a long time." Richard's blood ran cold as the man finally turned to face him. It was Professor Jameson, the very man who had raised Richard's suspicions in the first place. "You've been playing right into our hands," Jameson sneered, his eyes glinting with malicious glee. "Did you really think you could come here, to the heart of our operation, and not be detected?" For a moment, Richard's mind raced, piecing together the implications of Jameson's words. They had been watched from the start, every move monitored and analyzed. This mission had been a trap, carefully laid out by those who knew exactly who they were and what they were after. But there was no time for regret, no time for doubt. Richard squared his shoulders, his determination hardening. "We're here now," he said, his voice cold and resolute. "And we're not leaving until we've shut this down." Jameson's smile widened, his fingers hovering over a console. "You're welcome to try," he said, "but I think you'll find that Earth's secrets, and your own, are more closely guarded than you realize." Before Richard could react, Jameson slammed his hand down on the console, triggering a series of alarms that blared throughout the base. The room was instantly bathed in red emergency lights, and the monitors flickered as the security systems went into overdrive. "All units, we've been compromised," Richard shouted into his communicator as the team sprang into action. "Prepare for hostiles!" The base erupted into chaos as armed guards poured into the control room, their weapons trained on the intruders. Lennox and Kai engaged them in close combat, their enhanced abilities giving them the upper hand. Arya, meanwhile, frantically worked to override the security systems, her fingers flying over the controls as she tried to shut down the alarms and disable the base's defenses.